Welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today I'm joined by Dana Aronson. Welcome to the show, Dana.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mason.
Of course, it's been a minute. It occurred to me that the last time I saw you was in Oakland, California. And just after that, that's when the whole robbery instance happened. That's not how I remember you though. So it's,
But it's true. Unfortunately, that was the last time that we saw each other face to face.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and the flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
I really loved that park that you took us to as well. What was that called again?
It was Lake Merritt. And there are like botanical gardens, and there's a lot of little nooks and crannies to the big outer, Lake Merritt as a whole. So yeah, it was so cool because it was perfect weather and the timing, everything was really lush and vibrant.
Yeah, it was very exciting. I did really enjoy it there, but let's get to know Dana a little bit better. Can you kind of tell us your herbal origin story? Like, how did you get into this whole herbalism thing?
Yeah, good question. I think mine was a little kind of random, to be honest. I didn't really grow up. I grew up with my pops, like with camping and going on road trips and just like being immersed in nature that way. But there was never a conversation around medicinal plants or using them inside the household other than, of course, like our kitchen spices. But growing up, I didn't really have that influence of herbal medicine and that kind of information until I moved out of my hometown of Santa Cruz and moved to Oakland. And I was working at a really stuffy yoga studio, and I got fired like 2 weeks in. And it was the first time I ever got fired. I was like, in my early 20s, maybe like 21, 22. And I was like so distraught, like, darn it, like, man, I've never been fired. And I was going to school for American Sign Language. And my plan was to go through a whole interpreting program there and become an interpreter. And I walked into this random herb shop one day after class, and I was just blown away by the woman who was working. And she was just basically sharing so many of these things and information about these plants. And she was like, by the way, we're hiring. And I looked at her and was like, I have no idea what any of this is, right? Like pretty much nothing. And she was an herbalist, or she is an herbalist. Her name's Naomi Nash. She is from Australia. And she was like, I'm happy to teach you everything that I know and like give you references and really like foster that learning experience within the herb shop. And so I put in my resume and I got hired. And that's kind of where it started. I think, I was moving to the Bay Area and I was struggling with a few health, things that, there was a lot of like grief and grieving aspect. So like emotional health, but then also these physical health, fatigue and a whole bunch of things. And so when I got a job at this herb shop, she sent me home with all of these herbs and I started trying them. And I actually genuinely saw a difference in the way that my body was reacting to these herbs, and in such like a beautiful way. And then I started seeing, customers that would come in often and share their experiences. And then I was like, there's definitely something to this. I started kind of tapping in and really seeing like, yeah, herbs help people. And they're also shifting my health concerns in real time. And I'm really noticing this. And so that's kind of where my interest started becoming piqued. And I worked there for 5 years. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, I worked there for quite a long time. And I was talking to one of my friends who also worked at the herb shop, and she was like, have you ever checked out this low-cost herb clinic, like down San Pablo in Berkeley? And I was like, no, didn't know this existed. And I signed up to see an herbalist at this low-cost clinic, and it ended up being Berkeley Herbal Center. And I walked in, had no idea what this place was. And I walked in, and there was just this energy shift of like, what is this place? I need to know about this place. What is going on here? It feels really good to be in here. And then I had a session with a student clinician, and just that whole experience of like a 2-hour initial consultation where I really felt heard and really felt understood. And there was a lot of just communication back and forth about ideas and shifts that could potentially help me with, you know, what I was going through. And I just left being like, whoa, I think this is going to be my path. I think I really do want to take this seriously outside of the herb shop. And so, I actually ended up enrolling at Berkeley Herbal Center. Yeah, that's kind of how it all kind of came to be, I guess.
I could see the whole story in my head, and you're really taking me back. I remember, so I still get really excited about herbs and learning new things. Obviously, I love herbalism, but remember when you first got into it, like you really painted that picture. I'm like, oh man, when you first get into it, it's just so exciting. Like this whole new world opens up to you. And I just love that. And I really miss that feeling. I remember being in Eugene, going to the Red Barn and ordering a bunch of Hoshu Wu and just being super excited to delve into like traditional Chinese medicine and stuff like that. But thank you for sharing your story. So it sounds like, is it Pam Fisher that runs?
Yeah.
So would you
Pam
say
Fisher,
she's like your original herbal mentor?
Yeah, I would say Naomi Nash was definitely probably my first mentor, but like officially in like a school setting. Yeah, Pam Fisher taught me and was the founder of that school and the director for a very, very long time up until recently. And yeah, she was definitely someone who helped kind of show me all the different possibilities of like what an herbalist can look like and what all the different avenues you can go down, because I think sometimes, at least for me, like I had this one picture of what an herbalist was. And then throughout kind of my schooling, really understanding like, whoa, this can take so many different forms, and everyone has kind of their interests or their scope, and being able to kind of run down those different paths to see like, what is it that interests me, outside of just herbs, right? Like, how do I want to interact with these plants? And yeah, it was a really wonderful experience. And I'm honestly so thankful for that school.
What was your original vision of what an herbalist was? Was it like straight up clinical herbalist, or what did you imagine was an herbalist at that time?
Yeah, I honestly had an idea of like, this is going to sound so ignorant and so naive, but this is genuinely like what I had in mind. So I grew up in Santa Cruz, right? So very like laid back, lots of like, at least when I was, growing up, lots of tie dye and very like people that were like really into like farmers markets and, alternative ways of living for a lot of people. So I just kind of thought it was like the long skirts and the living on large swaths of property and growing their own herbs and, doing something like that. And that's of course very beautiful. But I was like, well, I'm in the city and like, I don't have a garden space. I'm living with multiple people. I'm living in these areas where there's a lot of traffic and a lot of, there's just like a lot of compactness in the Bay Area. So, I think part of that was just like, okay, this can look different from me. Like I don't have to be this like, alternative tie-dye person that's like doing herbs,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were basically just describing everybody from my hometown of Eugene, Oregon, which I'm guessing you've been to Eugene before, yeah?
Oh, yes. Yeah,
totally.
many times.
Okay. That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, jumping from say herbal student to now, you actually wear a lot of different herbal hats. I want to say you do products, you do consultations, you teach, you do a lot of it. So I'm just kind of curious, how did you go from herb student to then now having like a clinical practice? What was that like?
Yeah. Well, when I went into Berkeley Herbal Center, the reason why I chose it was because they had a low-cost community herbal clinic and they had 2 clinical years that you could do. And so at that moment, when I was kind of searching out schools that was one of the main attractions for me, was because I was interested in clinical and seeing clients. And again, I didn't quite know what that looked like, but I knew that was definitely a little bit of an interest for me. So I went through their apprenticeship program, which was kind of the sped up intensive program. And then I went through their 2-year clinical experience, or 2-year clinical mentorship, working in that clinic. And just, of course, when you're working there, you have mentors that are overseeing your formulations and giving you tips and tricks and ideas and things like that. So you're not just kind of thrown into it, and trying to swim. So it was really beautiful to be able to also be mentored, where, we all make mistakes, and then the, mentors will kind of grab them and check them and be like, hey, did you see this? Because this might be like a no-no. Yeah. And it was just a really cool learning experience. And then also on top of that, just really seeing the plants shift someone, essentially, like, the plants are doing the healing, right? I'm just kind of like being a middleman of suggesting some herbs that I think might pair well with what you're describing to me, or kind of your ailment that you're coming in for. And so it was really cool to see shifting. And for some clients, I saw shifts within a week, where I was even surprised. And then, some would take longer. Some people I would see one-off. Some people stayed with me for the whole 2 years I was there. And so that was kind of how my clinical experience was fostered. And then once I left the Bay Area and moved up to Southern Oregon, I kept my practice going. A lot of that turned into Zoom, because I did move up here right before the pandemic, which was, unexpected, just as everyone. Yeah, just a little bit. And so I ended up kind of shifting and not seeing people in person and seeing people on Zoom. And just really finding like there's so much power in just kind of holding space and kind of like helping and assisting people on their health journeys, whatever that looks like. They're basically letting me know what they want. And so I'm just trying to meet them where they're at and see if we can make something happen. So I guess that's all to say, Berkeley Herbal Center definitely was that shifting point of like how I got into clinical practice. And yeah, it was a cool experience.
I love that you brought up that you were still surprised when you saw the transformation in some clients, and we've been doing this for a while, and you still get surprised when you like herbs work. You know what I mean? Like, I want to say one time I read on Seven Songs Facebook page, he had this whole spiel about it, and like he's like, yeah, he even still gets surprised when herbs work, and he's been doing this for decades. So right. I think that's really neat. So I want to hear about some of your free clinic experience. Like, are you? I want to say you're involved with various free clinics and whatnot, or mobile clinics, and I'm just kind of curious if you could speak to that. And like, what would you say are the benefits of working for a free clinic and whatnot?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, in kind of my school days, I basically made this agreement to myself that I would, for the most part, say yes to any kind of opening within the herb world, and figuring out whether or not that's something that I would be interested in or not, right? Try something once or twice. If it's not your vibe, like, move on to the next. And if it is, like, foster that. So I really tried to say yes to things that I was potentially curious in, or even saw like a glimpse of curiosity in it. And so in 2017, I had a opportunity to work like a mobile herbal clinic for a gathering. And so, with that, we were basically set up, and we were basically the tent outside of like the EMT, major disaster tent, right? So we saw people that were having nervous system ailments, people who were constipated, people who have twisted their ankles, anything that basically wasn't life-threatening. That medic tent would basically push people to our kind of tent or space. And that was the first time where I was kind of in this mild first aid wellness space where you were having to think fast on your toes, and you were just seeing so many different things come up. And Dia Pauline was the one who invited me on her crew, and she has been a part of MASH, Medicine for All Seeking Health and Healing, for a really long time, especially while she was on the West Coast. And she brought me in and taught me a lot about how to set up a space like that, what you're needing, liability forms, how to make sure you're note-taking everything. And after that experience, I was hooked. I was like, okay, this is something I really love doing. And with herbal first aid, it's really cool because you get to see changes almost immediately, right? It's very acute medicine, right? Someone's not coming into our space saying like, I've had this chronic issue for years and years and years. And, that's something that we would more see in like a clinic space or a session. So it's really cool to see kind of both ways and how they work. And so, yeah, I've been doing that since 2017. Another one of my mentors, Lisa SF, she's now back in Berkeley, but we also set up a wound care clinic in West Oakland in 2019, I think. Yeah. And we essentially paired up, and we were asked by Punks with Lunch, who is a needle exchange program, to see if we could offer some sort of wound care for people that were coming and getting clean needles and bagged lunches and breakdowns and things like that. And we ended up saying yes. And so that was also another kind of space where I was offering wound care, which does go along with the first aid. The wound care that we were seeing, or the wounds and kind of people who we were seeing, were a community of people who use substances and who most of them were unhoused. So, you're thinking about like clean water, and do they have access to, the luxuries that a lot of us have, like shelter or, clean food, clean water, safety. And so we were working with these people and just basically trying to mitigate potential infection or try to combat active infection depending on the person. And so, through that experience specifically, it's a territory where I have never experienced direct homelessness, but I have been very closely linked with people in my life who use substances, both family members, both partners, friends, brother, like the whole shebang. So that was a very kind of tender spot in my body, and just experiencing people in kind of this like openness and non-judgmental state of just like really trying to help them and make sure that their wounds aren't going to be exacerbated and turned into something even larger, was also for me almost healing, and really helped me in my understanding around addiction and substance use. And it was a pretty powerful experience. The clinic is actually still running today. When we first started, we didn't have a name, or we were just kind of roguing it a little bit, but they're now called Curbside Care Clinic, and they're still going, and they are teaching their wound care protocols now. And Lisa is still an active participant in that. And so that's also been really cool to see, right? Just it take shape and transform as time goes on, and the expansion of it, because essentially when there's expansion, then there can be more help offered.
Yeah, it's such important work. I mean, I'm sure the people that came and visited you all were just so grateful to have that type of care, and for free. So yeah, that's incredible work. You wrote on your Instagram account, speaking of free clinics and whatnot, When we talk about wellness spaces, it is not just about the crew that is in service. It is also about the folks who participate in utilizing spaces like these. The system doesn't work if there isn't engagement. The system will also not work if there isn't trust, respect, and wellness within the crew. I was just wondering if you would want to expound upon that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you can show up as yourself or with a crew and offer something. But if people aren't interested, if people don't know who you are or what you're doing, if they're put off by you for whatever reason, in my experience, you're basically showing up and not having a lot of impact. And so it's like, okay, how can we show up in different spaces and offer, for an example, like a free clinic or a free wound care support, and have people want to engage with us? And a lot of times that is just like taking a moment to chat and share information and education. And a lot of that is also transparent care around what we're doing, what we're using, what the best, support, maybe when they aren't in our space, how can they better support themselves, in the coming days? And I find that can build a lot of trust, as well as, again, not bringing our own judgments to the table, meeting people where they're at and getting the job done, in a sense of like, I'm not here to try and change your lifestyle. I'm not here to like preach to you. I'm not here to like share what I think about your lifestyle. I'm here because I think healthcare needs to be accessible. And unfortunately, for people who are unhoused and people who are using substances long-term, there's a lot of shame and a lot of judgment placed on them. And that a lot of times will make them recede and not look for care. I've heard many stories from people saying that they don't want to show up to the ER because they just get turned away, or they're having to wait hours and hours and hours because they look a certain way. Yeah. And honestly, I just don't feel that that's right. And, I feel like we as a community need to step up and support if we have access to. And, and then, the second part of that question is like, within the crew, whether that's, a pair of people offering something or a whole, sometimes our crews are like 6 to 8 people at a time. And the way we are in collaboration and the way that we move and support each other also ripples out into the people coming in, or just ripples out of the space. And so if we are in combat with one another, if we feel like we're not supported, if we feel like there's gossip running around, or, any of these things, like that breaks down the communication and the kind of the workflow. And then that just radiates onto people that we are trying to hold space for. And so collective wellness within a crew is also really important, because again, you can show up and be fine, but if your crew's not fine, it's not fine. So, so it takes, a lot of trust and a lot of commitment and communication to work with other people, especially people that maybe don't work the same way as you do, or maybe have different backgrounds as you do, or different herb knowledge than you do. And, for me, it can be tricky, but that's also the really beautiful thing about it. It's like collaboration. You get to learn so many new things from other people and kind of get taken out of your comfort zone of what herbs that you tend to pull towards.
Nice. Yeah, just incredible work that y'all are doing. And is Lisa SF, so she's an herbalist? Yeah,
Lisa Sander Fox.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask if it stood for San Francisco.
Oh, it's actually really funny because, she's like, has been in the Bay Area for a long time. But no, that's like an abbreviation for her name. But yeah, she's still based in Berkeley. And she is an herbalist and also midwife. Yeah.
Right on. Well, so staying kind of along the lines of free clinics and MASH and whatnot, I'm trying a new segment. You could let me know what you think for the show. It's called Giving Flowers. And I know that you have some sort of a relationship with Greta Grizz. And Yeah, I think this kind of could be a fun segment where you or the guest can kind of give that person their flowers and just like let us know what your relationship with Greta is and how she's impacted your life and your herbal story.
Yeah.
Do you like that question?
I love that question.
Okay.
And do you honestly want me to answer that, or this is just an idea you're throwing around?
I 100% want you to answer it. And you're the first person
cool.
I've done this with because I saw Greta comment on one of your posts and I'm like, oh yeah, I bet there's a good story there. So
yeah. I owe so much like grace and love and respect for the people that have taken me under their wing, because honestly, like I would not be doing what I'm doing without them. And it's really important to acknowledge our mentors, whoever they are, because again, they have been these pivotal people in our lives who have gotten us to where we're at now. And so, yeah, Grizz was definitely one of those people. Dia Pauline was also one of those people. They worked really closely together. Mm-hmm. And because I started working with Dea, I got in kind of with Grizz. That's kind of how I met Grizz and started working with all of them, plus some. And man, Grizz is the founder of MASH. And she has been rocking it for probably as long as I've been alive, honestly. She has been doing this for many years, setting up at demonstrations, setting up at protests, setting up at Earth Skill gatherings, and really just bringing this like really solid grounding energy. And she is just so solid in her knowledge and so solid with the free sharing of information. Like she was never someone that felt like she frowned upon you for maybe not knowing a question or like not knowing something about an herb. She was always just so receptive to, I guess I can speak for myself, receptive to my learning, and just always being able to talk protocols and ask why she's doing this or why didn't she go with this? And again, it was all, a learning experience, and just the grace that she had with having kind of the youngins like work under her or like volunteer under her, and having this like really beautiful communication pathway where it never felt like a hierarchy necessarily, but just this really beautiful opening of like free information sharing. And she like, man, she's such a solid human and yeah, just such a kind heart. And I'm so thankful I was able to get to know her.
Yeah, she's a badass. She actually did the clinic at the Brighton Bush Herbal Conference the year the year that I organized it, and it was really neat to get to hang out with her. And I want to say she had some sort of electrolyte drink that came in handy for me at least once. Do you remember? Do you know what it's called? Or
I do. I mean, she just calls it like the electrolyte it's just an electrolyte formula, but she did a lot of research around, I forget the organization. It was like the World Health Organization that would go into countries who were severely malnourished and dehydrated, and found this sugar and salt combo ratio that they would use to try and basically get fluids into someone. And so then she beefed it up with some herbal teas and aloe and lemon. And a lot of times those electrolyte blends had a lot of like cooling, mineral rich herbs, because it's usually, it's often given in times of like heat and summer and, spring and dust. And so it was this kind of like this cooling and moistening, also hydrating formula that is bright pink, and you add to your water bottle. I'm glad you got to taste it.
I did. Yeah, I really enjoyed it quite a bit actually. So shout out Greta Grizz. So that's our new segment, giving flowers. I'll probably do this every episode. Well, shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about some plants. Yeah. So Dana, Pedicularis.
Yeah, that was.
What do you think?
I love that. Man, yeah. So there's a lot of Pedicularis species, but here in Southern Oregon, we have the densiflora, which is this beautiful, bright red, pink, wine color flower that pops in early spring. And it's just ground cover here. It just pops beneath the green trees and kind of the brown, brushy floor. And it's just like so captivating. And so I've really got to know it, these last handful of years I've been up here. And it's one herb that I've been using a lot. I do use a lot. And also it's one of my staples in kind of the mobile clinic realm. Every environment will be different. So it kind of depends on what environment it is. But I do find Pedicularis being just around a lot. And other than just its beauty, it has an affinity to the musculoskeletal system, right? So it has this beautiful kind of messaging around how can we kind of drop into our bodies? How can we release tension in our, shoulders and our backs and our jaws? And it's like, how can we ground out of this like ethereal realm into our physical body? And I think Pedicularis is a really great teacher in that. I love this plant for sleep and pain, different types of pain. I actually really like this formula, or I really like this plant in different kind of withdrawal formulas for people coming off of substances, specifically like opiates or benzos. So it tends to creep into a lot of those different formulas. I've seen it work wonders on TMJ, a lot of tension in the jaw, grinding teeth, locked jaw, people that like actually have their jaw locked. I find, I've been working with it a lot in clinic. I guess the couple times that I was using it last week, I was using it a lot for sleep and pain. Yeah. A lot of people with like headaches, like tension headaches, muscle spasms, cramping, menstrual cramping. It shined really good. Yeah.
Are you using the tincture of the aerial parts?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you can just use the leaves, but I like to gather a mixture of both flower and leaf. I really find that like just the harmony between both are awesome. But I know like when I was living in Oakland, there wasn't a lot of like densiflora around. So that's where like gathering the leaves were really helpful because there actually wasn't a lot of expression of the flower. And so the little bits of flowers that were around, I didn't feel was responsible to try and grab all of them, so that's where, if you're in an instance, you can absolutely just harvest the leaves and that doesn't mess with any of its kind of reproductive parts of the plant.
If I recall correctly, yeah. So when I took Columbine School of Botanical Studies, the densiflora was at like the southern end of our range. So we were kind of more like in parrot speak, Racemosa and Groenlandica, the elephant's head range. So have you used, say, the elephant's head or the parrot speak at all?
I've used parrot speak, yes. Also in tincture form. With elephant's head, actually, there was only, I see it every year up in the Sierras, but every time up until last year, I didn't see enough of it. And last year I saw so much of it. It was so cool. I just hung out with it. I didn't harvest or anything like that, but it was just so cool to hang out with it in such an abundance from the years previously, because, we've been going to these spots year after year. And, but I've never actually used it in a preparation or medicinally yet.
So the densiflora sounds like you said is almost like ground cover. And I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up any sort of like, say, concerns regarding, wild harvesting of this plant. Do you have any thoughts or opinions on wild harvesting, say the Pedicularis densiflora?
Yeah. Well, good question. harvesting and harvesting, cultivating, land tending, like that whole discussion is very nuanced. And,
Sure.
Unfortunately, little snips on social media or just like a little 15-minute conversation doesn't really do the topic justice.
Right.
And so, that being said, Densiflora can't be, or from what I understand, is really hard to cultivate. So it's actually a plant that grows around that can't be cultivated. And so with that, I think that kind of is more alluring to harvest because you can't grow it, like, let's say like skullcap or calendula or catnip, these things that we can grow in abundance.
Yeah.
Or farm in abundance. But I was talking with Elise from Oshala, and she was saying it's super hard to cultivate. And so, with Densiflora specifically, it is like mildly hemiparasitic. So it does grow around poison oak. And so sometimes it can take up the plants that are growing around it. Poison oak, which we wouldn't want, right?
No.
Yeah, right. So we want to be like extremely careful where we're harvesting, period, but also for that reason, right? Like, where is it growing? Is there poison oak around? If so, don't harvest. And so again, I think the low impact harvesting would definitely be leaves. But again, because it's so abundant in Southern Oregon, I'm always wary of harvesting, of course,
Sure.
But I think because it's so abundant here, there's less of an opportunity for it to have like a huge impact of like not growing again. But of course, if everyone wants to harvest Pedicularis same time, like it could be wiped out. So again, that takes responsibility and education, and also this like little piece of humble pie of like, do I actually need to harvest this? Am I actually going to use it? How much do I need to harvest? Can I source it somewhere else? So yeah, those are all good questions to kind of have while you're thinking of harvesting.
Totally. Yeah, this wasn't supposed to be like a gotcha, Dana, or anything like that. Like I love the medicine of Pedicularis as well, but yeah, it's definitely, if you're like a new to herbalism or something, you're not going to want to just go out there and start harvesting these wild plants without having some sort of like teaching around, say, ethical wild harvesting, which I could point you in the direction of. Howie Brownstein's wild crafting checklist is a good place to start, but there's lots of other resources that you could learn about. United Plant Savers probably has some resources as well. Yeah. So shifting gears over to probably a much more cultivatable plant. Let's talk about a little bit of let's talk about blue vervain. One of my favorites. Yeah.
One of your favorites? Cool.
Totally. I actually had the tincture right before I call. But yeah, I knew we were going to have this, but I do try to take it, somewhat regularly.
Yeah.
I think it's really good for my constitution specifically. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Do you find that it's helpful to take like before interviews or like before you kind of like go on the air?
Totally. Yeah. I took a little dropper of St. John's wort and a little dropper of blue vervain, but I'm trying to take those two tinctures somewhat tonically. They're pretty helpful for me, but so yeah, definitely, but it's definitely helpful right before the interview for sure.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I met blue vervain up in the Sierras again, with Pam, and it was an herb that I actually didn't know about too much. I mean, we learned about it, but I didn't have a relationship with it per se. I was just like, I know what this plant does and like a few of its actions and la-di-da-di-da. And then I ended up ordering some from Oshala and just kind of playing around with it and tincturing it and putting it in apple cider vinegar and trying it as tea, which was not really my favorite, to be honest.
It's pretty bitter.
But I tried. And yeah, I feel like, within like my relationship with blue vervain, I really do find it kind of this teaching of wind and windiness and worriedness. When I found it, it was kind of in this like open, kind of went through some trees, and then I kind of opened up into this like small little field, and it's this really like gentle, thin, kind of like whimsical plant. And when I was sitting with it, I noticed like any little amount of breeze would really like shift this whole plant around. And so I was just kind of like sitting with it and watching it, and kind of got this download, I guess you would say, around potentially it being really helpful for worriness and windiness and anxiety, and people, again, that kind of hang out in this ethereal, heady space. And so I ended up, again, like researching it a little bit more and just kind of trying to understand more of its dynamics. And again, when I started using it in practice, really seeing the shifts that occur. And honestly, it's kind of similar to Pedicularis, not necessarily in like the main musculoskeletal realm, but just kind of with like really helpful for relaxing tension, specifically to the upper body. Again, jaw, tension, headaches, neck, shoulders. But then also this like mental chatter that can go on. So again, if that's day to day, if that's chronic, if that's just a little blip in time, also folks that are trying to go to sleep and feel like their minds are just spinning and spinning and spinning. It is a really cooling, bitter herb, so it can also really be helpful for the digestive system and the liver. And a lot of that is usually impacted by people who are living high stress lives, or who are chronically underslept and on edge a lot of the time. And so it's kind of cool to see like that also impact, right? Maybe people that get nervous stomachs when they're stressed or over anxious. And I also find that, again, it can be really, really helpful for sleep, and also things that, again, similar to Pedicularis, I put it in sleep formulas and anxiety formulas, and also kind of withdrawal formulas with people using different drugs. And it's pretty amazing. It's also really cooling. So if you tend to have like a fiery, hot, excited constitution, it can kind of like cool that down a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Every time I hear someone describe blue vervain, I'm like, oh man, no wonder it's medicine for me. Just to be like kind of vulnerable here. Like I'm really working on not apologizing so much, because I'll like tend to apologize and for literally nothing. So I'm trying, like when I send emails and stuff, I'm trying not to say sorry, because I'm like, what is there to be sorry about? And I kind of, when you're talking about blue vervain, I'm like, oh yeah, I feel like it could be medicine for that. The other thing I wanted to know is, I remember learning about skullcap, and I never really felt like that drawn to it, and constitutionally, I never really felt its effects. And then I remember the first time I tried a dropper of, say, blue vervain, I could feel it, and I was like, oh, this is what I feel. If you were bringing up circular thoughts, because that's how I learned skullcap, was like, oh, if you have circular thoughts right before bed or something like that, skullcap can help. But blue vervain was super helpful for me, like say in that regard, and then just the overall relaxant. My constitution absolutely loves it, and that's again one of those moments where I'm like, damn, herbs work. So yeah.
And I've seen it really cool in like panic formulas, like literally like acute panic, or like acute panic because of maybe trauma or around too many people, or et cetera. And you're like, I'm in the same boat. Like I know skullcap is so dearly loved by many, many herb people. And I do use it from time to time, but I tend towards blue vervain. Of course, they're a little different, but I don't actually have an affinity to skullcap within my own relationships with plants. And again, I use it from time to time just to kind of check in, like, hey, is there anything you want to share, like offer? And I still haven't had that like aha moment yet with skullcap, but again, blue vervain is definitely more of a go-to for me.
Totally.
Yeah.
So we made it about 45 minutes into the show, and I haven't even brought up your like business name yet. Sorry.
It's all good.
I need some blue vervain. So Wild Kin Botanicals. That's I want to say your practice, probably your products. and just your overall umbrella. I've always wondered, where did the inspiration for the name come from?
Yeah, it just kind of came to me one day, which was cool. It was just kind of like, oh, this is it. And it's basically just a kind of remembrance piece around the plant kingdom and how we are family, how we are kin. We aren't these like two separate entities that are living, in this world. Like, we are very much nature, and nature very much is us. And kind of this theme around also interacting with nature, like as far back as, animals and humans and pollinators, they all interact with nature. And it's this like really beautiful dance that we have. And so, the idea of like this hands-off approach of like, don't touch anything, I guess national parks are kind of like this, not to get into it too deep, but like pristine, don't touch, don't mess around. And I understand to a certain degree, like why that is, but in general, as like a lifestyle and a way and of a practice of like an ethos of my journey in this lifetime is remembering that we are kin, remembering that, we are each other. And I also have a duty and responsibility to respect. So that could be picking up trash. That could be not harvesting. That could be watering or peeing on a plant, like all these different ways.
I can get behind that.
Yeah, right. It's like digging up roots and like digging up bulbs to help spread. And, and then also on top of that, just remembering that like, we don't have to be in this like overarching like system of just needing to be a robot in the system to be productive, to live in this like huge capitalistic society. It's like, we are innately wild. Like we are innately like, that is what nature is. That is what Earth is. Like in our DNA, we're wild, y'all. And like, not to forget that, right? Like, of course I live in today's society and, do the things to survive, but also just not forgetting that aspect and really trying to tap into that as much as possible.
So I interviewed Jesse Wolf Hardin, and he what you're saying is like so eloquent and well put, and I'm like, it almost mirrors what he said in a lot of ways, and I thought that was really neat. He was essentially saying, even though we have to do these, sit behind a computer and do this type of work, he said, even if you have to do that, you should still bring your wild nature to the computer. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a mindset shift. I never really thought about it that way. So that's really neat. I'm glad I asked. I've always been curious. So going back to your Instagram, which by the way, dear listener, you can follow Dana @_ Wild Kin, right? Is that Yep. Sweet. All right. @_ Wild Kin on Instagram. She's got a great Instagram channel. But you wrote, so these were a few of your thoughts, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of have you expound upon. I chose 4 of them. So you said, envisioning what is possible, a few thoughts that have been running through my mind. So I'm going to just list these 4 different things. And if you want to summarize it or tell us what's on your mind. Yeah. So you said transparent care is proactive care.
Yeah. I think we have all, modern medicine has a place in our society. I will never say that it doesn't serve in a way, but I think a lot of us have had experiences where there is this hierarchy and this kind of like snootiness in the medical system around doctor knows best, don't ask questions, just do what they say. And to me, that's not transparent care, right? It's just like almost like a parent telling a child what to do. And like the child doesn't know anything, like just do what mom says. And so I think in herbalism, me and so many other people, right? This isn't just my thing I've come up with, but just really trying to be transparent in why we're asking questions, why we're asking certain questions in our sessions, why this is kind of a little gray language, but why we're offering these lifestyles and protocols or herbs and things like that. Just wanting to make a client feel comfortable, and I think transparent care is also trust, right? Building trust, building rapport, and like they know what's going on in their bodies the best. So again, like I want to hear everything that's going on, so I can better understand, and again, choose lifestyle, shifts and herbs and food choices that relate to what you're saying.
I really love your approach. It's surrounded by humility and meeting the person on their level and being non-judgmental. I think that's really important. So, so another one is community wellness can't happen without clinic team wellness, which I guess we borderline covered earlier, but I don't know if you want to say a couple sentences on that.
Yeah, I just think, again, if the foundation needs to be solid, right? Like it needs to be, there needs to be trust, and also trust in the sense of like, I trust that you will make the best decision for the person that you are seeing right now, right? Like it's not my way or the highway. It's like, no, I actually like know you as a practitioner, herbalist, and I trust that you're going to make the best decision. And I also trust if you don't know what the best decision is, you're going to come and ask someone, or again, collab or kind of think tank with one or a few other people on crew. And again, that's just trust building. And sometimes that happens immediately, but sometimes, some of these people I've been working with since 2017, right? For almost, what is that, 5 years?
Yeah.
So again, just like
6 years,
working with people over and over and over, that trust again is built.
Love it. Yeah. Also kind of going back to earlier in the convo and Greta Grizz, this is another one of your thoughts. Free sharing of information will empower and help change the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the internet in general has been a huge lesson in this, right? I mean, pros and cons to it, of course, but just the idea of like being able to suss out information and acquire information to then best make the best decision for yourself. And I think as someone who had the privilege to go to school and like to take time out of my work schedule to learn this craft, and I'm always learning, of course, but I know that some people don't have that access, and I don't. Again, like part of my ethos, I guess, is like to make sure that people have the information and kind of tricks to better suit them for their journey, and so I want to be able to empower people with information that I have learned over the years to then take with them to better support themselves. And so I think that that's really important, because I think, like, again, I'm wanting, me and a lot of other people are trying to shift the way that we view the medical system and we view healthcare. And a lot of it is very behind like this paywall or behind this wall, right? Like if you're not privy to the information unless you're part of the cool kids or part of the group, And so I'm trying to step out of that and completely flip that on its head and have everybody be part of the cool kids, right? Like,
amen. I love that. It's funny too, because we have the HerbRally Schoolhouse, which is technically a paywall to certain content, but really we kind of look at the Schoolhouse more as like if you want to help support our work. Yeah. And that, so thanks to all the HerbRally Schoolhouse members. Most of what HerbRally has always offered has been for free. So I'm totally on board with you, always. Dana. Yeah.
And there's like that, if you don't mind, like there
is
like that finesse and dance around like, I have bills and like, I obviously have to afford to like live in society. So I'm also not saying like, I see clients and I charge, I make product and I charge, I work for Berkeley Herbal Center now and like I get paid to do that. So it's like, I'm not saying that like you should never be paid for your work, but especially like if I'm showing up and volunteering and not getting paid and offering medicines for free, like I want to be in that space of, again, like just offering that free service essentially.
Yeah, I got to say, I'm hitting the table here. Our most popular video on our YouTube channel currently is David Hoffman's herbal business advice. And he's essentially saying, don't participate in it, which I'm not sure that, because it's very divisive. There's a lot of comments about how people don't like what he's saying. But I think that, again, it kind of comes down to nuance. And then it's funny to watch the David Hoffman video back to back with a video we just released with Krista Sinadinas, an herbalist in Northern California. And she's essentially saying, know your worth. So dear listener, I recommend you go watch those two videos back to back. Maybe I'll leave a link in the show notes. Sweet. Well, let's keep rolling. I'm having a lot of fun here. This is the last one of that I was going to bring up from your Instagram account as far as what your thoughts were. And you say, I really like this. Above all, respect the plants. Remember their stories. Offer thank yous always. We couldn't do it without them.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, like, I think in general, as humans, right, ego is part of our existence. And I think that it takes a lot of work and practice to try and step outside of that. And again, we might be showing up to these clinics or showing up in practice, and we are like in this we're kind of a middleman to like the client and the plants, but essentially what I believe the plants are really doing the healing, right? I'm not healing you. I don't want you to give your power away, to me. And like, it's just never really been my thing. Like, again, I want to open up a space where you, like a client that's seeing me can learn their own stories. I now work for Berkeley Herbal Center, and these fresh students that are coming in, like, yes, read the books and like go to the workshops and learn kind of, their actions. But there's also this really beautiful way of connecting with plants that have nothing to do with books, that has nothing to do with anyone else's experience with plants. It's like, plants will tell you what they want to tell you. And that teaching is super prevalent to how you're going to share these plants and like what you're going to do in your practice. And so again, I just had this experience last weekend where this woman came into our space and she was having gut issues for like 4 days, just like lots of things going on with her gut. And I just took a really traditional neutralizing cordial from like the Eclectics and just offered it to her. I'm like, you've tried so many different things, but you haven't tried this. So let's see if it works. And she came back a few hours later and was so stunned, like all of her ailments went away. And she was just like thanking me. And I was like, thank this, like, you should know about this. Okay. Like, let's either get you some, or let me give you maybe someone that makes this. Maybe I can make it free, whatever, but let's just get this into your cupboard. So now you can start forming a relationship with it. And it's true. Like, we could not do what we do without the plants. Right.
I love that. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of what you said earlier when you were just hanging out with the blue vervain, as opposed to like just using it medicinally. You learn so much just by hanging out with them. And I notice a lot of times when I ask the question, who have been some of your mentors, a lot of herbalists will say the plants, and I really dig that. But so let's get to know Dana a little bit better. Just a few more questions. And I've been asking this lately. What is a hobby of yours? A random hobby of yours that is outside of the realm of plants and herbalism?
Ooh. Oh, so interesting, because a lot of my existence that was like brought to me by my pops, like in like immersed in nature, like get yourself in nature. I've been really into going to the gym. Like going into a gym, which sounds crazy, but for some reason I'm really loving it. Very not plant friendly, very just like bright lights and really not cool music. And like, right. There's like so many aspects to the gym where it's like not really my vibe, but for some reason I love going, and it's my mental health loves it, my body loves it. And so that's something that I'm doing regularly right now that I'm really thriving in and feels good, and definitely has nothing to do with plants or nature.
So when you go to the gym, I recommend using your own headphones. That's what I do.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I actually didn't go to the gym the other day because my headphones stopped working, and I can't go into this place without some sort of like buffer.
It protects you from the shitty music and the random creepers too. So
yeah, just people trying to talk to you. You're just like, I'm in my vibe.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to the random part of the show. We're gonna do a random card from this Let's Get Deep Friends Edition.
Oh, great.
And we'll just see what we got.
Yeah.
I don't know the question.
Okay.
And I might even answer it as well. Oh, what was your best concert experience?
Ooh. Man, that's a really good question.
I love this question.
I've seen so many shows. That's honestly very hard to.
So I know exactly what I'm going to say if you want me to buy you some
why
time.
don't you say it first?
Okay. So this actually is two concerts, but you'll see why it's related. Do you remember an artist named Modest Yahoo?
Yeah.
So Modest Yahoo, when I was in my probably early to mid 20s, he was my favorite artist. And we went and saw him at the Portland Zoo one year, which was kind of a random venue. But basically what happened was at the end of the show, he started doing this thing where he would let the audience come on the stage with him. And I remember my friend Jesse was the first person on stage, and he's up there bouncing around. And I was probably like the 15th person on stage. What was the song? I want to say it was King Without a Crown. And we're all just bouncing up and down on the stage. And I was like 2 inches from Modest Yahoo, just like feeling it. And that was absolutely lovely. But then one time he came to Eugene, Oregon, which is my hometown. And he came on my birthday, and I got to go meet him and get a picture with him and hang out with him like at the small little venue. And then we went and watched him play at the McDonald Theater. So I'd say both of my best concert experiences involved Modest Yahoo.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. And they both involved like essentially hanging out with him, which was kind of random and crazy at the same time. So, but yeah. Did you think of any?
Yeah. I mean, I think about like, oh man, like again, so many shows. I guess recently there's a group called Marty O'Reilly and the Old Souls Orchestra. Sometimes he plays by himself, sometimes he plays with his crew, but they went to UCSC. So they used to busk downtown for years. And then they did a residency at the Crate Place, which is a little restaurant in Santa Cruz, and have now, been traveling the world. But I really loved seeing them because the way he plays and his voice specifically is like so raw and like raspy, and they kind of have like this one plays a stand-up bass, one plays a trumpet, one plays a violin, and he plays a guitar. And they also just do a lot of like mashups and like a lot of like improv, which I love. I really love like blues music and jazz because of this reason, where they're like, they stick to kind of the program, but then there's a lot of cool influx, and each show is never the same. Like, yes, they might play the same songs, but they just tweak it every single time. And they come into the crowd and they, want people to sing with them. And they're just really raw, and there's not a lot of glitz and glam, but their true like essence and their true, just like their craft really shines. And it's been really cool to also watch them. So I don't think it was like a particular show, but just seeing them over and over. There's obviously a reason why I keep seeing them, because I love them. I just really love the way they play. But I mean, if I could see I think if I could see anyone in concert, it would be Melody Gardot. And I think I would literally I think it would probably be the best show I would ever seen. It hasn't happened yet, but hopefully one day it'll happen.
I don't know that artist. I'll have to check them out. Yeah. Okay.
She's amazing. She's a jazz singer. she actually got in a horrific accident when she was like 18 or 19. She got hit by a car, and she had to learn kind of how to like speak and sing again. And she has to wear like these glasses because she's really sensitive to light, but her voice is like the most angelic thing I've ever heard. Like it is God almost, is like just this like beautiful, beautiful singer. And she also tours the world. She does a lot of stuff in Europe, unfortunately. So she hardly comes to the States anymore, but she's an amazing singer. Highly recommend all of her albums from 2008 on.
Well, if she hits up Oakland or Portland, you're going to have to try to get to it. And I have a feeling Amanda's going to love both of those artist recommendations, so I'll let her know.
Yeah. I could actually see her really liking those two.
Oh, yeah. Especially that first band you talked about. That's definitely her steez for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, just a couple more quick questions. Well, they don't have to be quick, but what keeps you learning and growing in the field of herbalism?
Telling myself that I will never know everything. Just being real with that of like, and that's the beauty of herbalism. Like, we will never know everything. I could sit with a plant 20 different times and get 20 different experiences, 20 different teachings. I could, and that's what is amazing. And I also think like keeping the curiosity alive is a huge one, right? Always being inquisitive, always asking questions. And again, you may sit with rosemary 100 times and think, oh, I know that plant, it's all good. Like, I don't really need to like indulge anymore. And telling that voice to like, shut up, I'm going to sit with rosemary again, because like, this plant could share something that I've never experienced with rosemary yet. So I think those two specifically are really important to me. I'm not, it's a practice. I'm never like perfect at it, but I really try to keep that at the forefront.
I love that.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, any exciting projects you want to plug before we get out of here? Or anything you want to promote or?
Yeah, promoting, huh? I mean, I don't know. I am available to see clients. I do have a practice. So if you ever want to see an herbalist and are curious, I have package deals. I have one-off deals. I am also available for mobile wellness spaces. So if you are someone who is looking for that, I can come with a crew and a whole setup. So I guess I could offer that. I also want to just share also, I do now work for Berkeley Herbal Center, and we are opening registration soon. So Berkeley Herbal Center is obviously based in Berkeley. We have an in-person program, and then we also have an online program, which was started with COVID, right? Where we couldn't gather in person for a long time. And so I used to work there in person. I now run their online program, which is called Village Herbalist. And so Village Herbalist 1 and Foundations, which is the first part of the program in person, are going to be opening registration. For the in-person, we open registration June 15th, and for Village Herbalist, early July. And if any of you watching or listening are interested in a program, I'd be happy to speak with you more about it. You can find me through my website or Instagram or, whatever the plugs are. Yeah. But it's this school specifically is, really special. We've been around since the early 90s, and it's one of the very few programs or schools that offer an in-person clinic internship. So if you are interested in that clinical aspect, if you are interested in working in a clinic and seeing a whole apothecary and seeing how to formulate and kind of be in that setting, Berkeley Herbal Center might be a good fit for you. And again, we offer in-person classes and then classes online to kind of, access a wider variety of people in different locations. But I am the academic director for the online program, and please reach out if you have questions about that.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll leave links to all that in the show notes and the YouTube description. Yeah, I got to have Pam Fisher on the show.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yes.
I've emailed with her over the years, probably for
Yeah.
the past decade, but I've never actually talked to her. So it'd be wonderful to have her on the show and get to know her a little bit more. So I want to say that's berkeleyherbalcenter.com, probably.
berkeleyherbalcenter.org. So we're a nonprofit.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Our school is a nonprofit, as well as the low-cost clinic. And again, it's low cost. So, I mean, we do charge for medicine and stuff, but it is very accessible in the world of, clinical herbalism. So even if you're local to Berkeley and don't want to maybe enter a program, but want to see an herbalist in person, they are a really low cost, effective way to experience an herbal session.
Awesome. And then your website is wildkinbotanicals.com.
Yes.
And again, on Instagram @_wildkin. I think that's going to do it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dana.
Yeah, super appreciate it. I always, appreciate just kicking it and hanging out and chatting herbs, and you're always a pleasure. So thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Yeah, let's meet up in Oakland sometime.
Or Southern Oregon. I mean, I'm way close to Eugene now, way closer to Eugene.
Yeah, well, next year when I visit, we'll have to link up. And are you going to be going to Oshala Farms herb event?
I did it last year. I taught there last year, and they invited me back. But I'm also a camp lead for like a camping trip coordinator for Berkeley Herbal Center. So I'll be in the Sierras with our classes doing that. So unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town, but I would, because they're my neighbor.
Yeah, that's right. Well, right on. Thanks y'all for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Herbalist Hour. Take care. Bye-bye.